Wild story out of Los Angeles, California in the United States, where this happened.
So are you going to render aid right now, or do I need to have my vehicle pull us over?
She has to stop cheating. She has to stop cheating. Yo!
Stop touching her! I need you to put him in cuffs right now.
Put your hands behind your back, you can get fucking tased.
Dude, are you fucking kidding me?
Put your hands behind your back.
You fucking kidding me? What the fuck is wrong with you?
Put your hands behind your back.
What the fuck is wrong with
Put
you?
your fucking hands behind your back.
You see my fucking hands behind my back.
Put your hands behind.
Man, how did a routine 911 call turn into such a terrible situation? Full story coming up on this episode of the Dr. Medic. Hey, now first, we all got to remember, please remember why we are here. Why is this channel even here? It's here to cut through all of the fluff and get down to what actually happened, why it happened, all in the hopes that we can walk away from this story and learn something. Every mistake in life is an opportunity to learn, so let's do that here, okay? Good. This incident actually took place way back on July 22nd, 2019, but all of the legal proceedings have now been completed, and I have just now recently come across all of the body cam footage for this incident. This is going to be a long one, so you got to stick around for a minute, okay? But first, who are the main players here? This guy right here getting the taser pointed at him.
Behind your back, you can get fucking tased.
Dude, are you fucking kidding me?
That is EMT Roryce Dirden. Now, at the time of this incident, Roryce was just about 25 years old and had previously worked in the Los Angeles area as an EMT for AMR for about 3 years before getting hired at McCormick Ambulance Service in 2016, where he worked for several more years up until this incident occurred. In addition to working as a 911 EMT for McCormick, like pretty much everyone else in EMS, Roryce had several other jobs, with one of them being as a set or a production EMT over at CBS Studios, where he would work as an EMT on set of TV shows like The Masked Singer, Price is Right, Dancing with the Stars, all that good stuff. Fun fact, Roryce has a father named Rory and a brother named Royce. Yep, that's Rory, Roryce, and Royce. This guy right here, that's Matthew. Now, Matthew was Roryce's partner that day. Matthew doesn't play much of a role, but you will see him later on, and Matthew is chill. And he also happens to be a field supervisor. This woman right here, leaning out of the ambulance here, that's Sergeant Jeanette Pelayo with the Los Angeles City Police Department. Now, at the time of this incident, Sergeant Pelayo had 14 years on the job, with the last 2 years in the Hollywood division, which is where this incident took place. Now, she was a field supervisor at the time and continued to work for the LAPD at least up until her depositions were completed in 2021. Now, this guy here who pointed the taser at Roryce and yelling is Los Angeles police officer David Voci. You may recognize his name, as several years after this incident, Officer Voci was involved in a shooting where he shot an unarmed man who died from those injuries several days later, and Officer Voci was eventually cleared in that case. This guy right here, that's firefighter paramedic Gannon with the Los Angeles County Fire Department. Now, I couldn't find much on Gannon, but it doesn't really matter because for the 5 seconds that this dude is involved in this incident, he really appears to be the only one who fully has his act together. When he reappears, we're just going to call him for the rest of this show the firefighter paramedic. And finally, that brings us to Lily. Lily was the patient in this call. Lily was homeless, autistic, and the apparent victim of a sexual assault, which is how this whole thing started in the first place. Next, we have to have a basic understanding of the system there in Los Angeles. Now, the EMS system in LA is large and complex and a bit quite different than many of the EMS systems across the United States. Again, let's take a look at the players here. First, we have the Los Angeles City Police Department, which we're just going to call the LAPD. They respond to calls for service and investigate crimes within the city limits of Los Angeles City. Now, there are many other smaller city departments around that respond to their own cities, like Santa Monica PD, Beverly Hills PD, Long Beach, Glendale. In total, there are nearly 45 police departments within Los Angeles County. Now, they all respond to their own cities, and anything outside of any city that is in the county, or for any city that doesn't have their own city police department, they are typically covered by the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. Now, this is a very similar setup for the fire departments themselves. Again, LA has their own city fire department that responds in the city and usually with LAPD. There are several other smaller fire departments like Santa Monica, Compton, Beverly Hills, and many more. But again, if there is an incident outside of the city, or for the cities without their own fire department, but still within Los Angeles County, then you have the Los Angeles County Fire Department. This last part, which is the most important, is probably the most confusing for most people, understandably. I'm going to drastically oversimplify this part for the purposes of this story now. So the part I'm referring to is who does the BLS transport and who does the ALS transport. Now remember that BLS is basic life support, where the highest level of care in an ambulance or a fire truck is an EMT. And ALS is advanced life support, where an engine could also have a paramedic, or an ambulance they could also have a paramedic. Yes, we could probably also have advanced EMTs, but we're talking about paramedics here. EMTs, BLS, paramedics, ALS. Now, for the most part, the majority of 911 ambulances in the Los Angeles system are BLS ambulances staffed with 2 EMTs. This is a very large tiered response system where your typical 911 call will get a BLS ambulance with 2 EMTs and then a fire truck of some sort that has several other EMTs and at least 1 paramedic. Now, in Los Angeles City, the ambulances are LA Fire Department ambulances. And outside the city and all throughout Los Angeles County, the majority of the ambulances are made up of, at least at the time of this incident, McCormick Ambulance, Care Ambulance, AMR, and Cole Schaefer. Now, since this incident, McCormick has since been acquired by AMR. They still use the McCormick name, but they've been acquired by AMR, and I believe that Cole Schaefer might have closed their doors since then. Now, here's one of the more important points to understand. On these 911 calls, the BLS ambulance arrives with 2 EMTs and a fire truck arrives with at least 1 paramedic, oftentimes with a full fire engine or maybe what LA County calls a squad truck. And these particular squads have paramedics on them as well. Now, that paramedic will do some form of ALS assessment and then will usually make the decision as to whether or not this patient will require continued advanced life support from the paramedic throughout the entire transport to the hospital. So for instance, if they are all dispatched, everybody gets dispatched for a stub toe. Paramedic would do an assessment, determine that the patient does not need advanced life support, and then transfer care to the EMT on the ambulance, who will continue patient care on the way to the hospital. And yes, people call 911 for stub toes. It's not even the worst of it. But if they get dispatched to like a chest pain call, the paramedic again is going to do the assessment. And based on their assessment, they may determine that this patient is having a heart attack. Now, if that's the case, the paramedic will continue ALS care in the back of the ambulance and ride with the patient all the way to the hospital, and their squad truck will follow them to pick them up so the engine doesn't have to go out of service. It's a pretty efficient system. It's very complex, but it seems to work pretty well out there in LA. What if the patient is fine and the paramedic turns over care to the EMT and off they go to the hospital, and then while en route the patient deteriorates somehow? Well, one of 2 things can happen. First, they would most likely just transport to the closest, most appropriate facility, which in LA is probably about 13 seconds away. Or 2, they can always pull over and call for ALS support to come back from the fire department. Now, sometimes you might even have one of those law enforcement officers that's on scene ride in the back with you. Now, when would that happen? Now, a cop would ride in the back for any number of reasons, like maybe the crew feels unsafe due to a dangerous patient, or maybe the crew had to chemically or forcefully restrain the patient. That's a common one. Or maybe the patient is a criminal and they're under arrest. Or another one might be if the patient is a sexual assault victim, especially if they are of the opposite sex of whoever's going to be attending care in the back of the ambulance. Now, it's not always required to have a law enforcement officer on a sexual assault call, but given a certain situation, it might be advisable to do so. So, now we're all experts on the LA system, right? Now, I promise you will need to know all of that background to understand how this insane nightmare came to be. So, how did all of this unfold? Well, in the morning hours of July 22nd, 2019, at about 05:45 hours in the morning, Officer Voci and his partner arrive on the scene in the area of Franklin Avenue and the 101 in East Hollywood, which is within the city of Los Angeles. Now, at this point, this is only a law enforcement call as they were called for a sexual assault. They arrive on scene, they do their investigation, they arrest a male subject, and then determine that they will transport Lily to UCLA Santa Monica all the way over on the west side of town because UCLA is a SART Center, which stands for Sexual Assault Response Team Center, meaning that any hospital in the LA area or California designated as a SART Center will be able to receive patients who are victims of sexual assault or abuse. They specialize in forensic examination of these patients, and their staff has the training and the resources necessary to be able to help the patient both physically and psychologically. Now, if the patient is actually injured, then usually an ambulance would provide the transport. However, if the patient does not have an injury that requires EMS, it is encouraged that local law enforcement do the transport instead, and that is exactly what was occurring in this instance. However, remember that it was Officer Voci and actually another officer, Officer Rodriguez, who originally responded to this call along with their supervisor, Sergeant Pelayo. Lily, just recently being the victim of a sexual assault, she told Sergeant Pelayo that she was not comfortable being transported by two male officers. So Pelayo offered to sit in the front passenger seat, and it would be Officer Voci driving and Pelayo riding front passenger with Lily in the back of the cop car. And now you can see here in this body cam footage, Officer Voci mapping out the drive to UCLA Hospital as it is far outside their normal coverage area and is about 30 minutes away if they can avoid LA morning traffic. Now, it is important to note that at this point, Sergeant Pelayo has already learned that Lily is autistic, which certainly, depending on where she is on the spectrum, will come with its own set of challenges when it comes to communicating the situation to Lily. For instance, on the way to UCLA, Lily repeatedly asks why she's being arrested and is repeatedly told that she is not under arrest and is being transported to UCLA for medical attention.
Services out there.
Am I really arrested?
Can you assist me with that?
Why am I arrested?
You're not arrested.
I don't understand. What did I do wrong?
Now, over the next 10 minutes, Lily starts to become more and more agitated and frustrated with the situation. She sounds concerned about being transported too far away and not being able to get a ride back, and whether or not she's in trouble.
Where are we going?
UCLA Hospital.
I don't even know where that's even at, but
It's in Santa
way too
Monica.
far away from my heartbeat.
We'll bring you back. We're gonna bring you home.
I just don't want to lose it because that's my only home. It's all I have.
I understand that.
Now, Sergeant Pelayo seems to be doing a great job communicating with Lily and is trying to speak as calmly and clearly as possible, even checking on her several times and then trying to explain what the SART Center is and why she's going there.
Lily, so let me tell you a little bit about this clinic where you're going to. This clinic was started, I think it's like 20 years ago now. Lily, it was started by a nurse who was very impacted by females that got raped.
But as Pelayo continues to explain the situation, Lily gets more and more upset and she starts crying heavily. They continue driving west on Santa Monica Boulevard when about 15 minutes into the trip, Lily is now laying down in the back of the cop car. Now, Pelayo says that she believes Lily is having a seizure, but Voci suggests she might be hyperventilating.
I think she's having a seizure.
Or hyperventilating.
Yeah.
Now, one of those things is a neurological emergency and the other is a behavioral emergency. Both are emergencies and both often involve EMS. Let's see which one you think it is. So, because of this, they pull over here on Santa Monica Boulevard, just on the east side of San Vicente. Now, they open up the back doors and see Lily and Officer Voci calls for an RA.
I'm Santa Monica. We need to get an RA.
Can you update our location to San Vicente and Santa Monica Boulevard?
Now, in Los Angeles, an RA unit is a rescue ambulance, otherwise just known as an ambulance. Now remember though, this is the LAPD and they run calls all day long with Los Angeles City Fire. But they are no longer in Los Angeles at this point because they're driving to UCLA and they are now in West Hollywood. But West Hollywood does not have their own fire department. They do not have their own police department and they do not have their own EMS. So they utilize Los Angeles County Fire Department for fire, Los Angeles County Sheriff for law enforcement, and McCormick Ambulance for EMS transport. So when they called for an RA, they advised dispatch that they have a female patient with possible seizures. Dispatch sends them an LA County fire engine and a McCormick ambulance. Now, the McCormick ambulance is going to be responding from their station, which is about 3 miles due east of this location. Right here is where we first get to see Lily as she's laying on her side, and you can see she is shaking a bit and then starts coughing quite hard.
Hey, Lily, we need to relax, okay? Relax. It's okay. You're with officers, okay? Can you breathe, Lily?
Lily. Lily?
Lily, can you breathe?
Hey, Lily, we're right here, Lily.
The officers, they're really doing all you can expect from law enforcement, and they are trying to get her to respond and trying to see if she is actually breathing. I mean, in my opinion, they are doing, the best they can at this point, but then Lily has something to say.
Hey, Lily. Lily, it's us.
Now, you can clearly hear Lily say the word seizure during her seizure.
Hey, Lily. Lily, it's us.
Now, there are some rare seizures like focal aura seizures where someone can still kind of be conscious, but that's not what happened here. But in seizures where someone's whole body is convulsing, they cannot talk, they cannot form coherent sentences, and they cannot just snap out of it either. Any of you watching this, any physician or experienced paramedic or nurse or even an experienced EMT would immediately be able to determine that Lily is not having a seizure and that whatever is occurring is behavioral in nature. Could identify it in 2 seconds. Now, make no mistake, she's still a patient. She's still a victim of sexual assault, and she is still having an emergency that is deserving of medical care and law enforcement. But her emergency is a behavioral one, and at this point, I don't think anyone would expect for Officer Voci or Sergeant Pelayo to be able to tell the difference, because they are not medical professionals, and they are just doing everything that they can. Now, they continue to coach her and try to calm her down, and you can hear Lily trying to respond, but her level of anxiety and panic is making it very difficult for Lily to be able to communicate.
Your tongue? No. Your inhaler? It's in your purse? Okay.
She's even asking for her inhaler and confirms that it's albuterol. A few minutes goes by and she's saying that she's in pain and hurting and doesn't want to hurt anymore and that she's scared.
Hang in there for me.
My bones.
It hurts your bones because you keep hitting it right here.
Muscles in my bones. I can't stop it.
Just relax.
I don't like it.
I know.
I don't like it.
Please, my hand.
So again, in my opinion, from this point forward, it's my opinion that Lily is having a behavioral psychiatric emergency. She's hyperventilating, she's having a panic attack, she is not having a seizure. So about 8 minutes goes by and a Los Angeles County fire engine shows up along with a paramedic squad unit. And guess who's on that squad unit? The firefighter paramedic. Now, the firefighter paramedic first checks in with Officer Vosi to get a quick report, and then he heads over to begin assessing Lily. And then Pelayo says this.
Where'd you guys find her?
She's actually a victim of a sexual assault, so we're going to UCLA. She's been very nervous already. She's autistic, and she says she suffers from seizures, but I think she probably escalated her nervousness today. She started crying, and then she went down on us.
637, call 6 on Santa Monica, 7
No, she's not under arrest. She's having a full seizure.
Now, right after this, it appears that this other officer here, who I don't know who that is, but this other officer is clearly aware that this was not a seizure.
I'm also... Grand mal seizures?
And then this other firefighter even says it wasn't a seizure just because Lily said it was a seizure.
She's just saying seizure.
No, she started to, and she was also, she was having drool come out. She had no control of her body.
She was talking though.
No, just right now at the end she started talking. She was unable to talk. She started crying, and then when we saw her lean over, we were at the light, and then we went code 3 to go pull over here, and that's when when the seizure was full on. Afterwards, I got her to say a word, and then as soon as she tried to say epidural, I guess her inhaler helps her at some, then she went back into seizure mode. And then when you guys got here, I had calmed her down a little bit, and it exited, but it had been going on for a while. It took a while for them to get you guys out here for us. She's not under arrest. She's a victim of sexual assault from this morning. We were headed to UCLA.
And you can start to see kind of the beginning of Sergeant Pelayo continuing to make the case that this was definitely a seizure. And I think that we will see that this denial or cognitive dissonance continues throughout the call. And now we hear the McCormick ambulance pulling up. There's a big factor that I haven't said anything about because I wanted to get to this point to let you feel the stress and tension that is already building up on this scene, and then share this tidbit with you. At this point, it is now 06:10 in the morning. Everyone you see on this call is about to get off from a long shift at work. The firefighters, most likely they're at the tail end of a 24-hour shift and are probably going to go home at 0800. Sergeant Pelayo has been on shift since last night at 1845, and maybe most importantly, Roryce, whom we're about to meet, has been on shift for 60 hours straight. You heard that right, 60 hours or 2.5 full days. And when is his end of shift? 0700, which is about 45 minutes from the moment he shows up on this scene. Now, I'm sure he's dying to get off duty so he can go home and sleep, right? Nope. Roryce actually has to be at CBS Studios by 0800 to work his other job. So right now, just pulling up to this call, he has been working nonstop for 60 hours, has caught a late call that could very well send him past his end of shift time, and that late call could very well impact his ability to get to his next job on time by 0800. Now, for all of you EMS folk watching, can you feel the tension and the stress? I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but it's there and it exists. So Pelayo then goes over to help Lily walk to the ambulance, and we can see that other officer again that's there trying to talk to Lily. Now remember, a few minutes ago, Pelayo actually told this officer a few minutes ago to clear the scene because they weren't needed anymore. But this officer went over anyway, and I think it was because this officer knows darn well that this was not a seizure and is attempting to calm Lily down. And it's not working, and I don't think Pelayo liked that. Now, you see, when someone is having a panic attack like this, there is only one way to resolve the emergency, and that is for the patient to slow down their breathing and relax. That can happen by talking to the patient and getting them to calm down on their own and using your words and using the tone of your voice, or in some cases, it may be necessary to chemically sedate the patient for their own safety so that this does not escalate into a more serious emergency. And now by this point, Everybody on this scene seems to understand that Lily is not having a seizure, but there is one person who continues to feed the delusion that Lily is having a seizure, and that is Sergeant Pelayo. Once that other officer moves out of the way, watch how Lily just latches onto Pelayo for safety, because that is the only place that Lily feels safe and is with Pelayo, and it's probably because Pelayo is the only person who won't recognize that this is a behavioral emergency. So now Pelayo walks Lily over to Roryce's stretcher, and she doesn't seem to really acknowledge Roryce or his partner, but one of the firefighters is giving Roryce the report of what's going on. Pelayo seems to be telling the firefighters and Roryce what the plan is going to be and says, "We will be transporting to UCLA." And Roryce responds by saying, "We're going to UCLA now? Listen."
So sit down. You're okay. I'm going to go in there with you and we're going to head to UCLA still, okay? Okay.
We're going to head to UCLA right now.
And it's my opinion, it's at this very moment that this entire scene begins to fall apart. Now, up until this point, the entire call and everything happening has been it's been par for the course and a normal 911 call. But now we have a conflict. And as many of you have heard in many of my other videos, conflict it's not always a bad thing, as it's 100% unavoidable in life. It's not the conflict that ruins people's careers and relationships and leads to terrible situations. It's how we handle that conflict and how we communicate with everyone about the conflict. Remember, what is conflict? It's just a differing of opinions, opposing forces, or in this case, a complete opposite of expectations. Roryce was most likely headed to this call thinking that this was a seizure, which by any protocol or best practice in the United States would mean the patient would be transported to the most appropriate hospital, which in this case, if Lily was having a seizure, would be Cedars-Sinai Hospital, which is less than a mile down the road and 4 minutes away. Roryce is probably thinking, dude, this call is going to take me to the end of my shift and this will be perfect because I will get off on time and I won't catch a late call and I can get to my other job. But Pelayo's expectation is nothing of the sort, because she is still thinking that the focus needs to be on getting Lily to a SART center, which the closest one again is UCLA Santa Monica, which in this morning traffic by this time is now probably going to take 40 or 45 minutes just to get there. Who knows how long to turn around at the hospital and transfer care in the emergency department, and then another 45 minutes back to the station. Lots of differing of expectations there. Now, the firefighter paramedic clearly seems to see this conflict, and then he tells Pelayo that there is nothing wrong with Lily medically except...
Sorry. Are we... Sorry. Yes.
There's nothing wrong with her medically.
Okay, that's right.
I mean, other than...
The seizure, or the whatever. Evidence. Okay.
But then Pelayo tries to finish his sentence by saying, except for the seizure. But the firefighter paramedic, he presses on and says, no, she did not have a seizure. And he's trying to say that Lily is having a behavioral issue, but Lily is sitting right in front of him. And I don't think that he wants to upset her anymore. So he doesn't use the word anxiety attack or panic attack. But then Pelayo, she almost admits it and says this.
Lung sounds were clear.
So she's just having a panic. Okay.
So she's having a panic, but then stops herself. I don't know why she stops herself, but we now have two confirmed conflicts that are not being addressed. Pelayo and pretty much everyone else there seems to be in conflict about what is wrong with Lily, and Pelayo and Roryce have a conflict about where they think Lily will be transported to. Can you feel the tension building?
Evidence. Okay.
So her lung sounds were clear.
So she's just having a panic. Okay.
So obviously she's getting under a lot of stress. But that being said, would it be better for you to take her under your supervision, or is she more comfortable with you in your car? Or in the back of the ambulance?
In the back of the ambulance, I'll go with her. I have a driver for each one of these vehicles, and UCLA is expecting her on the clinic portion of it already. Yeah, I'll be with you.
Back with you.
Yeah.
So if you could just be by her side, because she seems most comfortable with you. Okay, perfect. And you're comfortable with that? Okay.
So let's get in the back of the ambulance now and see how this one goes, okay? Now, this camera angle that you're seeing is the body cam of Sergeant Pelayo. Now, we have Lily up in the ambulance and secured on the stretcher, and she is in Fowler's or semi-Fowler's position, meaning that she's basically sitting up and she is seatbelted and everything Everything looks great. Roryce is sitting at the end of the bench seat and Pelayo sits at the other end. Now remember, this call is taking place in the county and Roryce has got to be wondering, because no one's really told him, why LAPD is even here and why there are no sheriff's deputies, as there is a sheriff's station less than 200 feet across the intersection. And at this point, I don't think anyone's told Roryce that the original call was 15 minutes away in the city of Los Angeles. In other words, on top of the tension and stress about getting out of work on time, Roryce doesn't know these law enforcement officers, and they don't know him. The public doesn't see it very often, but in many EMS, fire, and law enforcement systems across the United States, things tend to get a little territorial sometimes, and right now it might look like LAPD is kind of venturing out of their territory. I'm not saying that that's what's actually happened. It's just a thing that sometimes people can feel, and it can create an added level of unfamiliarity with the situation, which with this call is the last thing we need with all the conflict going on. Now, as you can see, Lily's safe spot is 100% with Pelayo. Now, the firefighter paramedic comes into the ambulance and continues a bit with his assessment, and he takes a blood pressure and a heart rate.
I sometimes have seizures.
History of seizures? So, hon, when we came up, you were talking. You know that, right?
Just because I have a seizure doesn't mean I'm not conscious.
I'm just trying to figure out what's going
And that
on.
really hurts.
And I'm not trying to accuse you of anything. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on, okay?
I don't even know what's going on,
128
honestly.
pout. What was it? 128 pout.
I don't know what
Rate
that
was about 110.
is because I had a fucking seizure.
Did I get her ID back yet? No, right?
I know when I have a
Oh, it's
seizure
right here, right?
is when
There it
my
is.
body involuntarily convulses. I'm still conscious, but I cannot control my body when it convulses.
I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just trying to ask you some questions to get some information, okay? I wish you nothing but the best, and I hope you get everything that you
I
need to
want
take care
some answers about my convulsing too, honestly.
Yeah.
Now, Lily tells him that she had a seizure, but he tells her that, you were just talking through your seizure a few minutes ago, and you can see that Lily gets upset and defensive, and then he really backs off because you can tell, looks to me like you can tell that his experience is telling him that he shouldn't press the issue any further because it is only going to upset Lily and make the situation worse. He is super calm and he is super chill, and Lily in turn responds by nodding her head and also being chill. Chill begets chill every time. So as soon as that firefighter paramedic steps out, Roryce starts talking to Lily for the first time, and he asked her if she's ever had a seizure before and when was the last time that she had a seizure. And she responds by saying that she had a seizure last week. And that's fine, it's not a bad question to ask. And then he asks if she went to the ER last time, and Lily says no. And I think any experienced paramedic at this very moment is hoping to God that Roryce does not say what I think he's about to say, but I think he's going to say it. Unfortunately, I think he says it, and then he says, so why are we going to the ER now then? And you guys all know, and if you don't know, that never goes well. That's about as productive as when you take a patient to the hospital and the first thing the nurse or physician says is, why'd you bring him here? It never ends well.
For sexual assault, they're expecting us.
And that's where you take her before.
Yeah, and then she had whatever.
And I had a seizure during the
It's
time.
not safe for her to be in the vehicle based on the situation.
So we continue on, and the conflict about where Lily is going is about to start escalating here. And the conflicts just continue to increase and increase.
Right, so the protocol for an ambulance, if a patient starts having a seizure, especially if there's no ALS, is there's a hospital right down the street. So if she was in our ambulance and we did not have the fire department and we were taking her to UCLA and she was having a seizure, the protocol is to take her to the closest hospital, which would be Cedars-Sinai.
Okay.
No.
Sorry. Before she got in here, fire said that this would be the ambulance that would take her to UCLA. I was not told anything on the opposite. I had my units following me there and at UCLA expecting me.
Where'd
The
you pick her up?
emergency U. She's a victim of sexual assault
Right,
from
where'd that occur
Hollywood
at?
Division.
Right, where
On
that occurred.
Franklin and Cahuenga.
Franklin and Cahuenga. So why was LA
I'm
City
sorry,
Fire
sir.
Department
Are
not
you-
called there?
I'm sorry, sir. Are you with McCormick or are you with the county?
I'm I'm in McCormick Ambulance.
Okay.
Picked you up.
All right. So this UCLA by first, I don't want you to be accusatory. She's a victim of a crime. I'm a sergeant of police. I wouldn't be sitting here if there was any other reason or any other protocol that could have been taken at this moment.
I already have seizures when I'm stressed.
So this is all on video. She went down in our vehicle. It is not safe to transport her. They believe that she can go straight to UCLA, and that's the guidance that they gave us before we took off. If there's anything opposite of that, then you guys need to call fire back and have them transport at this point.
Now, Roryce has a point that if the whole point of the ambulance being there is that Lily had a seizure, then she should probably be transported to the closest, most appropriate, which in this case is Cedars-Sinai. But work with me. Deep down, I think Roryce knows that she didn't have a seizure. The firefighter paramedic told him that. You can obviously tell this is behavioral, and so he probably knows that it really doesn't matter which hospital they go to, and that most likely the only downside to driving all the way to UCLA Santa Monica is going to be that Roryce is going to get off of work late. Now, Sergeant Pelayo has been sticking to her guns that Lily had a seizure this whole time, but I think deep down she realizes that after everybody has told her, the medical professionals, the EMTs, the paramedics has told her that this was not a seizure, but I think that she doesn't want to admit it, because I think that she understands that while if it truly is a seizure and that it's a medical emergency, and if I stick to that argument, then, well, yeah, maybe we probably should go down to Cedars-Sinai, but, you know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I also know that it wasn't a seizure. So let's just take her to UCLA Santa Monica because that is where the SART team is. And in all honesty, I just don't know what's wrong with Lily, and I would rather have her transported in this ambulance instead of my cop car, which is fine for her to say that. But these conflicts are taking place right in front of Lily, who cannot understand why there's any conflict in the first place, because in her mind, all she wants to do is get to UCLA and be protected by Sergeant Pelayo and be assessed by the SART team. And as soon as she hears Roryce suggest going to Cedars-Sinai, you can see her quickly say the words no and look over at Sergeant Pelayo for confirmation that we are not going to Cedars-Sinai. And it's at this moment where the turf war and territorial dispute completely blows up. Sergeant Pelayo believes that she's in charge of the situation. But this is Roryce's ambulance, and now this is his patient, and he believes that he's in charge of the situation. And they go back and forth right in front of Lily until Lily just can't take it anymore.
UCLA is expecting her, and that's where your driver's going at this point.
We have no proof of her having a seizure. She does not present any symptoms of having a seizure. When
so
the
this was...
showed up, she was conscious. I'm not... Just listen to me first.
Wow.
I'm going to tell you from
there
my
are different
perspective.
versions, different ways of having a seizure.
So I need both of you to listen to me because you're my ambulance. So for me,
So then I need you to pull over right now and call county fire back.
Thank you.
If you're not going to transport her.
We're already moving. We're transporting. But I want you to...
Okay, so then we don't need to have this argument.
It's not an argument. You're going to listen to me.
Sit down.
This is what I want you to understand. This is what I want you to understand. There was already an incident that occurred. 2 incidents. There was a sexual assault and there was a seizure that occurred before you were in my
Why
ambulance.
don't you have your
Oh, now you're
supervisor
saying
meet
seizure.
me
We don't
at
need to have
the...
anything. We're already moving.
Okay,
Listen
but
to me.
you can't speak to a victim of a crime like that
I'm
right
not
now.
speaking to her. I'm speaking to you.
No, you're speaking to both of us.
Exactly.
Okay,
Relax.
so if you guys want to handle this somewhere else, you can.
Let's
Other
just
than that, you need to listen to me. So, like I said,
You need to stop doing that because it's not safe.
like I said,
Well, he's being a dick.
you need to listen. And before you start accusing people of being a dick, I didn't accuse you of not having a seizure. I'm telling you.
Have your supervisor meet me at the emergency
my
room.
supervisor's driving this
Okay, then I
ambulance
will
right now.
speak to him then.
So
I'm not going
this
to
is
have...
what you need to. This
Sir,
is what I'm trying to make you understand. Stop
no.
talking. Stop talking.
Okay.
So there was a crime that happened, right? And there was a seizure that occurred. So I'm telling you, there was 2 incidents that happened
You do realize
prior to. There's 2 incidents that happened prior to being in this ambulance. Is this what you said? Is this what happened about in the car? Is this how she acted in the car?
You either pull over and have county fire reach her.
We're not going to pull over.
So-
We're already moving. There's no point in going over.
So are you going to render aid right now, or do I need to go? have my vehicle pull us over.
She has to stop seizing. She has to stop seizing.
Now, I'm going to play this part right here over in a few minutes, but I want you to pay close attention to Roryce's hands and notice that, once again, this is obviously not a seizure. This is a behavioral thing with the patient convulsing, and I'm not saying that any of this is her fault. I'm just pointing out that it's not a seizure, and she is having another behavioral emergency.
Like I said.
I'm
Now she's a medical patient.
Get off of
You
me!
need to chill. Now,
Get off of me!
that's not how
Get off me!
That is not a seizure.
Get off
That
me!
is not a seizure.
Get
That is not a
Get
seizure.
off, please!
That is
Please
not a
pull
seizure.
over. Please get off me! Please get off me! It's okay, Lily. Listen, you just put the patient in a certain...
Yo!
Stop touching her! I need you to listen, sir! Stop touching her!
This is over with. Get out! Get out! Get out!
Call county!
Get out.
You're gonna be
We're
under
not
arrest! You do not have a right to do that! Call the county now! Put this guy in custody! Put him in cuffs right now! Get your supervisors here! I need you to call county fire! Or Beverly Hills! He's in custody right now.
One of the most dangerous things that can occur in the back of an ambulance is standing up and being unrestrained without any seatbelts on. And Roryce is now standing up, and Lily is taking off her seatbelts. And so Roryce, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing and is trying to keep the patient restrained, but he's not a paramedic, so he can't sedate her with drugs like Valium or Ativan or Haldol or ketamine or whatever anybody might be using to sedate patients. He doesn't have that ability, and there's really nothing that he can do other than to try to keep the patient restrained. And so she keeps taking off her seatbelts, and he's trying to hold her on the stretcher, and Lily sits up and actually takes some swings at him a little bit and is trying to get out of the stretcher and eventually ends up off the stretcher and over in Sergeant Pelayo's lap on the bench seat. But the reason why I want to play it over so that you can see where his hands are on her leg, because in a moment, Roryce is going to be arrested. And the justification that Pelayo used, or at least one of them, to place him under arrest, is that he battered this patient by touching her and hurting her leg after she had removed consent. Geez, what a terrible situation. And regardless of what anybody thinks, okay, Lily is still the patient here. And she did apparently just suffer a sexual assault earlier. And so maybe Lily's behavior is expected. I'm not saying that it's acceptable for Lily to be kicking and swinging. And I'm not saying that it's right for somebody to make those decisions, you know, as an adult. But out in the EMS world, paramedics and EMTs deal with behavioral and psychological emergencies every single day. So do nurses and physicians in emergency departments all across the country. Now, Lily eventually finds herself over in Sergeant Pelayo's lap while Roryce tries one more time to try to hold on to Lily and get her to sit back down on the stretcher before he finally gives up. The ambulance stops and says that he is done with this and seems to tell Sergeant Pelayo to get out of the truck. Sergeant Pelayo does not get out of the truck, and instead, Roryce chooses to get out of the truck on his own.
Let me get it back up to Santa Monica, Canada.
Ma'am?
Any in the vicinity, 687 is requesting backup bearing in supervisor, Santa Monica, Canada.
Sorry, ma'am. I'm sorry. Sit down right here. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Fudge. Oh, my God. Oh, what the fuck was that? Oh, my God. What the fuck? Oh, Lord.
Hey, don't play the games, you're gonna get taken.
Okay. Calm down. Calm. Calm. Oh, Lord. Lord have motherfucking 6L40. Can I get a RA to my location for a female, approximately 25 years old?
Roryce's partner Matthew has pulled the truck over and comes to the back of the ambulance where they were actually going to switch and Roryce was going to drive. But when he opens up the door, you can see Sergeant Pelayo yell out to her partner, Officer Voci, to put Roryce in cuffs and detain him now. And that's exactly what they try to do. But Roryce is caught off guard and he pulls back a little bit. And then the officer pulls his taser on Roryce and starts yelling and cussing at him. Yes, in the span of just a couple minutes, this call went from a pretty normal 911 call to Roryce having a taser pointed at him and getting arrested. Now, Pelayo then chats on the phone with her watch commander and tells the commander the story of what just happened.
Yeah, so let me give you a quick update. So
The commander then asks her what Roryce is going to be arrested for, and she says,
is he what? Yeah, well, interfering and basically holding me hostage when I asked him to pull the vehicle over because he didn't want to have it transported to UCLA, and then he made her seize. He refused to do so.
holding her hostage. And then she says that Roryce made Lily seize. And all of this is taking place now on the side of the road in the great city now of Beverly Hills, on Santa Monica Road between Cannon and Beverly Drive, right here. So now, who is going to show up and assess and transport the patient now? Beverly Hills Fire Department. Now, the Beverly Hills Fire Department crew walk up and get the report from Pelayo, who then tells us a sort of different version of the story to these firefighters. And I think that they quickly grasped the nature and sensitivity of this situation. They arranged to get the ambulance to UCLA and get Lily assessed at the SART Center. And they seemed to take care of everything from there. Now, when Roryce stepped out of the ambulance and was told to place his hands in the air, he began to record on his own device, and the following is what occurred. Now, this view is going to be from Roryce's device, and I think he kind of placed this camera in his front shirt pocket, and it's facing away from him towards the ambulance here.
You're with me right here. Relax, man, relax. My hands are behind my back, and you see that. What the fuck are you talking about?
Handcuff him on. Relax.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Hey, don't bring your hands, you're gonna get taken.
What the fuck are you talking about? Y'all can, what the fuck are we doing? What the fuck are we doing right now? We're supposed to be taking her to the hospital. What the fuck are you doing? Are you fucking kidding me?
25 years old. Suffering from a panic attack, and she's conscious.
Once again, she is out of control. For what?
To my location.
Can I go in there and help her?
She's fine. Go ahead.
40. What is your location?
Dude, what the fuck, bro?
I don't know what's going on. That's my sergeant. I'm going to back her as much as I can.
Now, Roryce is then transported in handcuffs in the back of the cop car to the police station. And at this point, technically, he has not even been placed under arrest, as you can hear in this exchange.
I'm not under arrest.
No, not at this point, no.
Oh my fucking gosh, dude. I really don't understand what the fuck I did wrong.
Now, after Roryce is transported to the station, you can see Sergeant Pelayo get back in her vehicle at the scene and have this short exchange with another officer.
That worked out well. All right.
Now, when he gets to the police station, two of Roryce's supervisors also arrive to try and assess the situation and figure out what's going on. The LAPD captain on duty that night is Captain Pauk, and he immediately had Sergeant Pelayo come down to the station so the body cam footage from Pelayo's camera could be viewed. And after viewing the footage, the LAPD captain immediately releases Roryce. He is never officially booked or charged with a crime. Now remember that Roryce had that other job he was supposed to be at 0800, which he obviously never made it to because this whole process at the LAPD station took several hours and they apparently wouldn't let him make a phone call. Because he was labeled as a no-call, no-show, even with his McCormick supervisors calling that other studio job on Roryce's behalf, he was terminated from that position. Roryce was not fired from his position at McCormick, and he remained on leave while dealing with PTSD from this situation and eventually resigned from McCormick several months after this event. Now, in the months after this situation, Roryce filed a complaint with the LAPD and mentioned that the LAPD captain apologized to Roryce that day and stated that the incident had been mishandled, unnecessary use of force had been used, and Sergeant Pelayo would need remedial training. Several months after this complaint, Roryce filed a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles, the LAPD, Sergeant Pelayo, Officer Voci, and Captain Polka, citing damages related to battery, negligence, multiple civil rights violations, false imprisonment, and intentional and negligent infliction of emotional distress. Now, depositions for that lawsuit were completed in 2021, and Roryce's account during the depositions paint a picture of pretty much what you see in the video, but you can also tell that he kind of struggles a bit to make sense of the conflict I mentioned earlier related to, was this a sexual assault patient or was this a seizure patient? But you know, Roryce is also an EMT and he's not a paramedic, and it seems that during his deposition he is trying his best to explain that he was just trying to understand the full situation, and that when Lily started to convulse again, that he had no other choice than to do his best to physically restrain her. Sergeant Pelayo's account of the situation, though, is a bit different. Even after the LAPD captain apologized to Roryce and openly admitted that they made a mistake and mishandled the situation, Pelayo, 2 years after the incident and supposedly after completing LAPD's some form of internal remedial training on the situation, still believed that everyone else was wrong and that Lily was having a seizure. She even specifically stated that she disagreed with the firefighter paramedic's assessment and based much of her continued belief on the fact that she had a friend way back in high school who had seizures, which thereby makes Sergeant Pelayo aware of what a seizure looks like and how to handle it. She even went so far as to say that Roryce attacked Lily, citing that moment I told you about, I mentioned in the video, where Roryce was holding Lily's leg to keep her from coming out of the stretcher. She said that was an attack. When asked why Roryce needed to be handcuffed and detained, she stated she did not know if he was going to come back and start beating on me next. In the end, this nightmare was not concluded for almost 6 years. Roryce's case included both state and federal claims, with the civil rights violations claims being federal. So the city then removed the case to federal court, where they quickly filed for the case to be dismissed based upon qualified immunity. Now, without having a full legal review of this case, qualified immunity essentially means that government officials, in this case, Sergeant Pelayo, Officer Voci, and the LAPD, may be shielded from civil liability unless they violate clearly established statutory or constitutional rights. When judges and courts are faced with deciding whether or not qualified immunity should apply in any given case, specifically for law enforcement officers, the standard test the courts would use is to ask the question, would another reasonable officer in the same situation also have made the same mistakes? In other words, law enforcement officers are going to be protected by qualified immunity if a reasonable officer in the same situation would not have understood that their actions were unlawful. In this case, Roryce's claims of civil rights violations included negligence, false imprisonment, and violations of the 4th and 14th Amendments of the United States Constitution. According to the opinion of the United States District Judge, Roryce's attorneys failed to cite sufficient evidence from any previous cases that should have alerted Sergeant Pelayo that her conduct at the time was unconstitutional. In other words, the court believed that while Pelayo may have violated Roryce's constitutional rights, given the uniqueness of the situation with the transport and with Lily, that essentially because Sergeant Pelayo wasn't aware that what she was doing was wrong, she and the LAPD therefore should not be liable for any damages incurred by Roryce. And so the judge made the same ruling on all of the civil rights violations claims and granted Sergeant Pelayo qualified immunity for all claims against her. This left just the state claims, and since this case was in federal court, the case again had to be remanded back down to the state courts to litigate the remaining state claims. That litigation went on for another 4 years until the state case was finally settled on March 10th, 2025. However, Before the city paid out anything to Roryce, the city filed a last-minute motion claiming that Roryce and his attorneys failed to comply with the Government Claims Act, which in this case meant that Roryce and his team needed to submit a formal claim under the Government Claims Act within 6 months, then wait for it to be accepted or rejected, and only then can you move forward with your civil claim. But Roryce's attorneys failed to submit that formal claim and admitted so, citing that the failure was a procedural misstep that his attorney made at the outset of this case. So, 2 months later, the state court heard the city's argument about the failure to comply with the Government Claims Act, agreed with the city, and dismissed Roryce's case with prejudice, all but ending any and all legal claims that he might have against the city. In the end, I don't think Sergeant Pelayo works for the LAP anymore, and Roryce, unfortunately, he's no longer an EMT, but he does do video production work, and he drives 18-wheelers. In depositions, Sergeant Pelayo was specifically asked the question, do you believe that you did anything to contribute to the hostility of the situation? And she emphatically said, no. Just a few days before this airing, I spoke with Roryce about this situation, and I asked him the exact same question that was asked of Sergeant Pelayo. His response? He told me that he wished he could run this call again, and that he often thinks about all the things that he would have done differently. Specifically, he said he felt he should have just absorbed all of the dialogue, not responded when Lily called him a dick, and that he should have just silently ignored a lot of the things that were said. I did reach out to Sergeant Pelayo and the LAPD and have not received a response. So, who was right and who was wrong? Well, here's my opinion. First and foremost, Lily is the patient, and that certainly has to be recognized, but we also cannot stick our heads in the sand and pretend that we do not see the obviousness of this situation, and that is that Lily was the victim of a sexual assault and then suffered stress and anxiety-induced hyperventilation and panic attacks, all of which are real emergencies that deserve the same amount of respect and care as a full-blown grand mal seizure. Next, though, is the philosophy of deferring to expertise. In this case, Pelayo is the expert in investigating the crime of sexual assault. But the firefighter paramedic, he was the medical expert on this scene, and he was 100% clear with Roryce and with Sergeant Pelayo that this was not a seizure and that this was a panic attack most likely induced by the stress of the sexual assault and the subsequent investigation. Pelayo failed to recognize this expertise and continued to believe that Lily was suffering from seizures, even years after the incident occurred. This type of cognitive dissonance can be disastrous when placed in high-stress situations like this, especially with people with the amount of authority that Sergeant Pelayo has. Now, there is also the issue here of best practice for medical assessments in EMS as well as patient consent. This was not a time-sensitive call, yet Roryce was on scene with this patient for just 5 minutes. In the world of EMS, that's a pretty quick scene time, which would be great for things like major trauma, heart attack, strokes, but this was not a time-sensitive call. Roryce could have slowed this call way down at the beginning by introducing himself to both Lily and Sergeant Pelayo and specifically, hi, my name is Roryce. What's going on today? Especially to Lily. And then even asking Sergeant Pelayo what happened. Then, as is the case with every single ambulance transport, determine where the closest, most appropriate destination is for this patient, and then ensure that the patient consents to where they are being transported. If they choose to be transported somewhere other than the closest, most appropriate facility, that the patient is explained the risks of doing so and signs a consent form that she was made aware of the risks of bypassing the closest, most appropriate facility. Now, yes, there was a perfectly good hospital 1 minute down the road, and that would have been the most appropriate hospital had Lily actually been seizing. But she wasn't seizing. All she needed was a nice, chill drive over to UCLA Santa Monica, and then none of this would have happened. Does that excuse what I believe to be a massively excessive use of authority and force by Sergeant Pelayo and her crew? No way. But the worst thing about this call at least in my opinion. The worst thing about this call, aside from, of course, from the sexual assault, is not the panic attack. It's not the aggressive tone from Roryce, and it's not even the ridiculous response by Pelayo when she found herself in an uncomfortable situation. No, in this case, the biggest issue is the lack of accountability. Everyone makes mistakes. I have probably made more mistakes than Pelayo and Roryce combined times 10. I have screwed up so many things on EMS calls, fire calls, and even on air ambulance calls. I'm not saying that I think that those mistakes are something to be proud of, but the difference between moving forward in this career and in life for that matter comes down to owning your mistakes and owning and recognizing where you could have improved and where you could have been better. Roryce told me specifically that he wishes that he could run this call all over again because he would have done so many things differently. But Sergeant Pelayo feels that she didn't do anything wrong and played no role in the negative outcome of this case. Even years after this call and after her own department acknowledged that they made a mistake and handled this situation poorly, and after the captain even apologizes to Roryce, she still believed that Roryce attacked Lily and the firefighter paramedic got it wrong. We cannot expect perfection from anyone, even law enforcement, but we should always expect accountability. In this case, the only person not accepting accountability is Sergeant Pelayo. That's all I have for this story. Everyone be safe. Say something nice to somebody today. Defer to expertise. And if you make a mistake, learn from it and move on.